It's so bloody simple, but like you'll notice the kinder you are, the less of a dick you
I
are,
love it.
the more you get done. It's really, really simple.
I love it. I love it. Oh, hello, everybody. It's me, Ed Gould, with another unedited conversation. So I've just been listening back to the conversation that you guys are about to hear, so I can do this intro for you. And it happened about a month ago, and I had to remind myself of some of the details. But what I was pleased to be reminded of is how great it was to speak to Naddy. So the person you're about to hear from, Naddy Onions, a wonderful name and a wonderful woman who has got brilliant insights to share. Now, if you're in marketing or within business and you've ever wondered what it's like to be on the consultancy side, or if you're in agency and you've wondered what it's like to be in the brand side, this is the unedited conversation for you. You see, Naddy has been working at a very high level within agency for the last 20 years or so, always focusing in that hospitality sector that she specializes in. But recently, she became poacher turned gamekeeper, for want of a better expression, and has moved in brand, in-house. So this is the perfect conversation if you've ever wondered what it's like to swap. Is the grass greener on the other side? So listen on to hear from Naddy Onions, who talks about what it's like making that change, how agencies and brands can work better together. She talks about systems and processes you can put in place if you're a brand manager or a CMO or a marketing leader to get more out of your agency. She also gives us great insights about how best to work with each other in those organizations, those different sides of the organizations and the marketing function. So she's been doing this for a while, and she also brings with her an immense amount of experience in the hospitality sector. You see, Naddy has just moved into the high street restaurant brand Prezzo, the Italian brand. And like all of hospitality, over the last 5 years, it's had a hard time. Now, it is responding very well in comparison to many other brands. And Naddy gives us insight about the moves they're making and the ways that they're trying to continue to engage and to increase and to do more against that rub of the downturn that was caused by the COVID pandemic. So if you're in hospitality or if you're in a sector that was impacted heavily, this is a great conversation to listen to as well. So hospitality, the specialist area within that, what it's like moving from agency into in-house, and how we can all work better together for better marketing and business outcomes. That's what this conversation's all about. So, as is always the case, if you're ready, sit back, relax, and stay curious, because here comes another unedited conversation. So, Naddy, a huge welcome to you. We're going to get into all sorts of things as we're having this conversation, but I always like to kick off with giving you an opportunity just to tell our listeners who you are, what you're doing. Give us a bit of a background on Naddy.
Sure. Okay. I'm Naddy. I have been in marketing for over 20 years. I did a media degree and hustled my way through my media degree, so I got some really good work experience when I was there. Pretty sure I worked on one of the relatively first digital magazines. That's how old I am. Blogs weren't even a thing then, put it that way. And then, I've kind of gradually worked my way through tech agencies, ad agencies, marketing agencies. And so I've done that for 20 years, and then I've kind of moved over to client side in the last sort of 5 months. So quite the change.
So big, exciting times. And this is one of the things I'm excited to talk to you about. And I want to get on to where you've moved to later and talk about maybe that sector a bit more. And for our listeners, so they've got a bit of a preview, we're going to get into the hospitality sector. We're going to get into what those challenges are in that space. But first, and you've already highlighted it, a lot of the people that we talk to are ascending through the world of marketing and all of the wonderful things that sit around it. And you've just moved out of agency into in-house. And as an agency guy, I'm fascinated. So what were the hopes? What were the expectations? What are you hoping to achieve? And what have you noticed since you've made that move?
Yeah, I mean, any agency person will know that, you know, being in agency life, you kind of either love it or hate it. There really is no in between. You're either an agency person or you're not. And it's tough and it's busy and it's hectic and it's mad and it's a lifestyle. It really is. You just have to commit to that. I mean, thankfully and hopefully for most people, gone are the days of those 1 a.m., 3 a.m. finishes as you're trying to get a big bit of creative or campaign work across the line. But in my experience, it is still there. And so, it can be tough, especially as people move on to sort of families and things like that. It can be a tough life, but it's also, if you are an agency person, it's a life you thrive on. So that wasn't the reason really why I kind of moved over to client side. I always found the toughest thing I found agency side was juggling so many brands, so many purposes, so
Okay.
many missions, so many different KPIs. And as you know, agency side, you uh, at any one time you can be juggling 10, 15 clients. And I was always predominantly client services. So, the creative
Okay.
teams, they would be booked in, they would have their time assigned. Whereas, when you're kind of client services director, you're kind of juggling all these wants and needs, not only from your client, but from your creative teams as well. So
Mm.
it's busy, it's hectic, it's crazy. And I always thought, I wonder what it's like to be sat there with one mission, you know, one purpose, a handful of
There's
values.
a song there somewhere,
Yeah,
isn't
there
there?
definitely is.
There's a Queen song
There
coming out
definitely is.
there.
And if there's not, that's going to be the next venture. Um, and I always thought to have that true focus must be quite exciting because the gains you can see and based on the input you and your team are giving would be clear and would be really motivating.
Mm.
So I got the opportunity to head over into a brand, and really I just wanted to see what it was like and if it was all the things I expected. Time rich, being able to have a focus on some sort of single-minded goals, and to kind of really focus on my strengths, which is kind of in the marketing side. Whereas agency side, I feel like I was kind of wearing a lot of hats, and some of them maybe weren't my strengths.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, those are the real reasons. It's
I think And I think that you've hit upon something that is really interesting for our listeners, who, depending which side you're on. And obviously, there's the old saying, "The grass is always greener," and it is likely that the reality of what we expect when we make those moves isn't necessarily what
mm,
it is. But making a move is a
yeah,
great thing, something new, something different, and I love the idea of that motivation being, what's it like to have that clear
mm,
focus. Now, shouting for the
yeah,
agencies here, I also know that the CMOs I work with, they're very jealous of us sometimes of having the
yeah,
variety. But for me, I think it's about embracing all of those things and working out how you can do your best
yeah,
work. And that's what you're
yeah,
talking about. You've got to a stage where you're going, okay, I want to focus in on something and do something new and
yeah.
different. And that's really exciting. So you've been doing it. Where have you moved to? What's the mission? What's the big plan? Tell us a bit
Yeah,
about that.
cool. So I have moved over to Prezzo restaurants, so a high street Italian restaurant chain. Um, our mission, I suppose, is to be the standout Italian, and the one,
Mm.
you know, the consumer's first choice of Italian on the high street, I suppose. And to do the job of hospitality, to welcome in those guests, give them a great experience, and hopefully they will keep coming back to us. And we're doing that in a variety of ways. Our menu, our ingredients, it's really, really important to us and this business. Our restaurants, the people in our restaurants, So we kind of, as a business, focus on everything from operational to well to kind of marketing, I suppose. But we always have a focus on what's happening in our restaurants. We don't work in silos. That's really
Mm,
important. Marketing, has to be out there, has to be living and breathing the experience to fully be able to,
yeah.
engage the consumers and the
And
guests we want.
it's also that if we think again about that difference between an agency being told that and you being told that, have you noticed, can you recognize the difference of that mission as a pure marketing mission? It's really fully marketing, isn't it? It's like, what's the experience? What are the touch points? Whereas in your agency life, you might have got a piece of that or a communications aspect of that. How have you found grappling with that in your
I
now?
mean, an old hospitality client of mine from about 6 years ago, the penny has dropped since I've been in this role. And that's insane.
Okay.
That's insane. So when I think back to, I used to have a pub brand as a client. Um, and when I think back to that client and the, the successes were obviously clear because they were revenue based and they were obviously clear, maybe not always communicated what we were trying to hit for, but it's more where the frictions came from and where the frictions came in. So, as you know, agency side, agencies are big creative thinkers, but if they don't know what they're trying to
Mm.
anchor to, then there becomes a frustration from the client side. And
And from the
and from
agency
yeah,
side, because it becomes evident, and that's where that relationship starts
a
breaking down, I
hundred
think.
percent. And I think being this side of the table and having the transparency over, revenue, labor costs, supply costs, all of that sort of stuff, it's like the penny has dropped as to why ideas were thrown off the table or why ideas were progressed.
Yeah.
And I think the biggest thing I could have benefited from in that role agency side was transparency over what they're trying to achieve. And you know, what's your objective? Table bookings.
It's the
Yeah,
hardest thing to
yeah.
get to. And you've got, this is why I'm so pleased to be talking to you, because you've got that recent experience of being in an agency saying, why won't they tell us this information? And now you've got the flip side, which is, I don't have time to tell you every single thing. And or how have you seen that? Because the perception from an agency side is it's really hard to get the FaceTime, but we know that that's what creates better work. So how do you go about now in your new role? How do you develop that culture where partners like agencies or the wider team can understand not just what's in your head, but all of those other factors and levers that the business is pulling to make my experience at Prezzo,
Yeah,
for want of a better expression,
absolutely.
perfect.
Excuse me. So we're a huge fan of all agencies. So, when I was agency side and we had to go into all agency meetings, I used to hate it because you're all trying to protect your little part, aren't you? And your little pot and your bit of revenue and kind of your footprint on what you're trying to achieve. And that's just natural. Because, agency side, everyone's doing a bit of everything and you want to stand out, and that's really important. But the kind of way we do it is what we what they know that we're trying to achieve is, we don't want the creative team going to do a shoe and produce loads of creative that's then got not going to work in your channel. So the all agencies are absolutely necessary for everybody to get their wants and needs on the table, but also their feedback as well. And it's really
Does it help? Does it help you being from age? Can you crack everyone's heads together? Because talking from our side, I'm not going to say we're perfect with my agency hat on, but we've got used to the idea that the only way we can make our work now is by
uh,
collaborating with a number of
yeah.
different. But I wouldn't say it's
No.
standard at all now, but it's something that after 30 years, you sort of you quickly see the direction of travel. Does it help you being able to be that voice to bring that
I
together?
think so. I mean, luckily my CMO has agency experience as well, so I think we both sing from the same hymn sheet there. You know, we both kind of know what agencies need. They need to understand that they are, locked in, steady revenue, all of those sort of real operational things that agencies need. We've been there, we've had to, make sure we can keep the lights on in an agency as well. We completely get where they're coming from. And we also completely get the sort of creative direction and how sometimes digital channels might not be at the forefront of that. So we're always pushing and questioning and challenging. And I feel like, the last couple of all agencies we've had, we're slowly getting into a great process whereby they will talk to each other because, what you don't want to be is the messenger. Like all the
Well, you feel like you're working for them at that point,
yeah,
which is the client's biggest hatred. Like, we're meant to work for you and serve
yeah,
you, and we're thinking we're meant to be working
yeah,
together. And there's this weird sort of relation. And when it works best, you don't feel taxed. We don't feel taxed.
exactly.
It's a collaboration. But that is hard
That
to do. That's definitely
that is
hard to
it's
do.
really hard, and I think, you know, I can now all of our suppliers are fantastic. But when I was agency side and we had a client that said, do you know what, we're going to bring it in house. And I always used to think, well, why? You're not going to be able to do it as well as us. It's because of all the time it takes to force collaboration or to be the messenger between agencies. And, I can see why brands are doing that. I can see why there's tech out there to support brands being a bit more self-serving because that sort of agency, because most of the time you have multiple agencies, amazing if you can find one.
It's just dealing with the bullshit,
Yeah,
isn't
it
it?
is.
It's you don't want to have to deal with the egos and and it's really hard because marketing is full
Yeah.
of
Well,
egos, big
egos and
time,
emotions as
creative.
well.
Yeah, yeah.
There's lots of, especially when you get down into creative, it's like somebody sort of dissing your life's work. You're pointing at yourself. Okay, Ed, I've got you. Um, so so yeah, it's yeah, it can be full of egos. It's full of emotion, and I just think that the more agencies can do to collaborate together without the need for us to sort of constantly feed the baby birds,
Mm.
amazing. But then being on the flip side, when I was in agency, I totally waited to be told what you needed. Of course, we wouldn't talk to that agency because they're our competitor and we have the same services and we're not going to share our intellectual property. And, you know, it's just it just causes a lot of friction for the brand, I think. And I thought client side, the amount of time you have, like 8 hours a day to just focus on one brand, but actually, like it's almost like the channels that you're on are a brand in themselves because
Yeah.
you might have different agencies, all have different needs and wants for those channels. And if they don't talk to each other, you're just running between them constantly.
We are at a really interesting time in our world of marketing and creative and business because you've got wild technology coming in that promises to make everything easier, and hasn't it always? But there's some real benefits being felt. There's also the reality of the relationship between how business gets done. So if you look at any sector, if you look at manufacturing, BMW aren't making that vehicle anymore. It's being made by machine shops all around the world doing different components. If that works in a similar way to how we generate growth in businesses, you need to be able to pull in those different ideas. And I think the honest truth is being frank and forward with each other at the beginning is the best way to do that, because the level of complexity that CMOs, marketing leaders can add to how they engage with agencies, and the level of complexity that agencies can add in on the other side. It just sometimes rubs both the wrong way, and you don't get anywhere. But when it works well, I mean, one of the things that we did, again with my other hat on, we started something called the Carswell Collective because of this reason. You've got to be honest and go, we're not the best people to do that. So how do I keep it in my orbit? Because the best way that I can help you, Naddy, achieve your goals is, even if I'm not making money off anything, I want to stay involved in your world, because as a passionate creative, that's how you get the results. So how do you facilitate that and bring value to those clients? Well, if you can bring in other agencies, other providers that can do those pieces, and you're all aligned, then it is making for better work. So would you, if you were talking, so someone that's not been in agency and is in charge of a marketing team and is trying to engage with agencies, what advice would you give them to get the best out of their agency relationship?
Just to not be guarded. I think businesses, maybe they want to sort of be in charge and it be their rodeo. So they can be quite guarded with information, particularly around financials. But if what I know now with the pub brand client, if I knew that for you to break even, you needed X million a week, and I knew that you were 20% away from that consistently every single week, my strategy would have been completely different. And I would not have been putting forward, maybe some fluffy PR ideas. We would have gone hard on, a
lead gen and customer engagement.
Exactly. So to not have the information that businesses like that, especially in hospitality, are seeing day in, day out, daily trading information, weekly trading meetings, to not be privy to that or be told about that, I think agencies can come at things from the completely wrong angle. And so I just think it's about transparency. And, it's so wanky. But when you talk about being partners, I used to think, well, it's really hard to be a partner with a brand because they're not telling me everything and I can only do so much. It's bloody true. Go out for a drink, tell them everything, get your NDAs in place, and just forget about putting the barriers up, because unless these guys know your pain points internally, they are not going to be able to help you in the right way.
I think that is brilliant advice. So if I asked you the same question, what advice would you give an agency that's trying to get the most out of their relationship with the in-house team or their client? Where do you think they're, you've touched on a few points, but is there a big one that's, I think I know what you're going to say, but is there a big one that stands out in your mind?
Yeah, I think, well, at my last agency, we kind of tried to start putting this in place, and it was a client Bible, and there was leading questions in it. And before we got started on any single piece of work, you have had to have spoken to the decision maker on that account and had answers to those questions. Because, of course, you work with more junior people in brands and agency side, but unless we had the decision makers' objectives, mission, things to do and things not to do, it was all pretty much hearsay. And
or worst, it was passed down.
Yeah, diluted.
So someone, a vet just told me to tell you this. Well, what do you know about it? Nothing. You've got no chance of delivering that. But agencies are often too scared because they're on a retainer. They're too scared to say, hang on, there is not enough information here. So I think gathering that brief in that way and making the person that's, because we don't work. There's one key point that might get me in trouble and never hard again, but we are not working for Naddy when we work. We're working for Prezzo, and we have a vested interest in making sure that that business succeeds. Now, any of my clients, I want them
Yeah.
to succeed too, but just gently reminding them that if we bring those
Yeah.
stakeholders in, there's more chance that they'll look good
Yes.
than us
Yeah,
getting it wrong.
exactly.
I think that's great
Yeah,
advice. Really
yeah,
good
exactly.
advice.
So I think there's that big fact finding, and it's kind of quite being adamant that that's done with the right person, and then just not veering away from that. You know, as an agency, like you say, because you want to keep your retainers and because you want to, keep in favour, if you like, you sometimes don't challenge. And I think the most
Yeah.
interesting, there's a agency we work with, and one of the guys, he like challenges things that I say or the team say on every call, and there's nothing aggressive about it because he wants it to be right and to be a success. And I absolutely love that. And we fed
Give it
yeah,
a
yeah,
year.
give it a year. I'll be like, come on, dude. No, but honestly, it's great and it's refreshing. And what I used to get told a lot agency side is you're the experts and that's what we pay for. And it is bloody true because I can have an opinion. I think we should be doing this. I don't want an agency to just nod their head. I want them to say, actually, Naddy, if we do that, we're probably going to see this. If we did it this way, we know we're going to be able to forecast and see this, for example. You know, I don't know it all because I've been agency side for 20 years. I have never been client side. So the the agencies do need to help me. I was able to provide that help that side, so I have a strong opinion, but it might not be right. They've been working with Prezzo for 5 years. I'm the new kid on the block. And so I think it's really true if you ever hear that from your agency, you're the experts. That's why we're working with you. They want your opinion and they want to be challenged.
Mm.
And sometimes, we used to joke, is there the opportunity to challenge, or is this a JFDI? Is that the right word? JFDI.
Just
Yeah,
fucking
just
do it.
fucking do it from this
Yeah.
from their CEO, because you have to understand, is this a JFDI, or can I give you some feedback or new ideas?
I think it takes a while in this game before you can start understanding the difference between, look, guys, we just need to take this one on the chin and do it, because if we don't, we're leaving our friend who we work with hanging after. And sure, you want to create a culture where the CEO understands the marketing function and it gets that, but there are moments where just do it. But that doesn't mean every single thing that you get asked for is
No,
correct.
totally right. And we are we know that when there is when we do talk to agencies and we're like, look, we've just got to do this, we do tell them why, and
Mm.
there will be reasons why, and we might agree with them, we might not agree with them, but as soon as you tell your agency why, they're like, right, okay, I get it, we've just got to do it, understood. um but I think it's definitely transparency, it's definitely building that relationship, but I think as the brand, you've just got to give your agency as much information as you have.
I want to focus a little bit about the sort of changing world of marketing as well within the context of this thread that, you we've both, let's say we've both been doing this a while, in the in the best possible way, and I've certainly seen it change. I've seen it change a lot, and one thing doesn't change, that we're trying to derive value for the organizations we're working for. We're trying to do good work, but all of the levers and the methods, and we've gone through the age of specialism. We've gone back to integration. We've gone back out in-house, shake it all about, whatever that is. One of the big things at the moment, which stems from the days of Saatchi getting going and the changing, is this billable hours problem. And I say it as a problem because from where I'm sat as someone that's run an agency for it's a 30-year-old agency, it completely it's damaged the relationship and changed the relationship between the work and the outcome. And I didn't realize it had until I realized there was another option. I went through the first 20 years thinking, well, that's just the way it has to be. And then you get a bit older and you go, I can change this. I can evolve this how I need. I'd love to hear from someone that's been agency side and now someone that's hiring agencies. How do you view value from an agency? And also, how should brands be buying in marketing services, and how should they be spending it? Is there a different way in your eyes that people should look at that, value billing or outcome billing, or have you guys tackled
Yeah,
that
it's
at all?
really interesting. And we had a conversation about this recently. I mean, first off the bat, I do not miss doing timesheets. And I
Hey,
do not I
hell
do
yeah.
not miss the constant conversation around our monthly overserve percentage because it was,
I'm visibly
oh
sighing.
my
I'm
God.
visibly sighing for listeners.
Oh
It's
my God.
painful.
So in my last agency, obviously you have to measure, you're constantly measuring over service, I suppose, because in an agency's view, those are hours that could have been sold. Okay.
Mm.
And that's really tricky because, you know, the way brands buy agencies is how much is it going to cost for you to do this for me? And the only real way we can cost it is how many hours is it going to take the creative director, the account manager, the this, the that. That's currently how it's done. And you get a number, and then of course nothing ever goes to plan. Um, Agency side, and I stick by that. Even if you're one of the best project managers in the world, nothing goes to plan. There's always curveballs, and there's always those JFDIs that disrupt a lot of stuff that needs to be done. And so you get into overservice. The brand is just trying to get from A to Z, okay? They are engaging you, and the output they need is a rebrand, a logo, a something. They are paying you to get them there, right? Anything that happens in between, in terms of over serve because we couldn't shoot on that day and we had to do it on that day, anything that happens in between, they're not really seeing, I suppose, because agencies are quite,
And they don't care.
and I suppose they don't care actually. You're right, because we have engaged you and paid you to get us from here to this. So it's an output. That's what we're after. How you get there is within your power. And we're very sorry, we're probably going to be a little bit disruptive, but we're getting from here to here. I once worked with a brand that we probably overserviced 120%. There was not a hope in hell we were then saying, sorry, can we have that extra 70 grand we've overserviced you against? No, we paid you to rebrand us. We are now rebranded. How you got there, tough shit.
Well, this is you're really hitting the nub of the issue, because the only reason agencies are doing that is because procurement people within the buyers realized that an hourly rate was something that was easier to control. And there was a bit of a mess up years ago where someone at Saatchi said, I think it was Saatchi, they said, well, the client didn't have the money. So they said, well, we'll just bill you by the hour, rather than the old advertising way of, you've got $1 million, I'm going to take 15% and that's my revenue. So it stems from a practical solution that an agency tried to put forward, and then a procurement team went, hang on a minute, this is brilliant, because if we've got them on the hour, we can really screw. So the irony is, and I agree with you 100%, I want to get my client from there to there, and that's the price. They don't want all the hiccups and the pain of the journey. They might want the good bits, but they don't want the hiccups. So how you get them there is up to you. But the problem then comes that they've drilled you down on the hourly rate already and how many hours you've got. And so there's this tension again. And that's why increasingly we're exploring outcome-focused pay, where that is the cost to get there. It's up to us how we do that, and other options like that.
I agree. And I think, you know, there's a couple of things. Like the agency competitor now isn't, you know, matey next door or the agencies in London. The competitors are AI, Airtasker. Is it Airtasker where you can just say, build me a website and someone will do it?
Yeah.
It's AI, Airtasker. It's the freelancer now. Like, hopefully they're going to be, having their moment again. It's collectives, especially where you can kind of keep the work in the circle, but you know, recommendations might be
That's what
a
we're
loss
finding.
leader to one, but a gain for another. And I think the competitor set for agencies now has got so much bigger. And I think, adoption of things like AI or becoming part of collective is going to be really, really important. I
Mm.
also think as well, we've just done some sort of real focus on employees based on the generations they sit in. And Gen Z and Gen Alpha, you know, they work smarter, not harder. So those people in my team know quicker and cheaper ways for us to get the same result or better. They're the ones
Mm.
with the, AI adoption. They're the ones that, are looking for the agencies that might be subscription based or might work in a different way. And it's really interesting that the very traditional agency that I'm used to and my CMO is used to is actually not, it's like totally old school and too slow for some of the people we work.
Yeah, and you're a product of your environment. You go, oh, that's kind of where I come from and where I know. But we call it the Madonna complex, which is a bit out of date. Just saying Madonna, but it's reinvent
Yeah.
yourself every 5 years and the processes that you're doing. I mean, at our place to try and tackle that, you talked about billable hours. We're running a trial at the moment that we so in age for the listeners that don't know how agencies work, often in your contract you have a number of billable hours that you're targeting because as an agency, if because of this hourly route, you're trying to get as many people billed out. Now, what that means is an agency can't scale, so it can't grow, it can't attract the best people, and it can't do even better work for you. So to get away with that, we've binned those billable hours, and we said, okay, we're going to take a portion back. Yes, we need to develop outcomes, but it's not going to be 100%. It's not going to be 80. It's going to be closer to 50. And the rest of that time is about thinking about how we change and evolve the business and how we work with people. And it's not all perfect, but I would suggest whether you're in-house, in an agency, in a business, taking a similar approach to trying to work out what's right for now and not base that on the systems of yesterday and being really open and inquisitive. Try it and don't be threatened. I think that's not a bad
No,
thing.
absolutely.
And for us as old agency hands, it's about us staying relevant and us adopting those things and using how to use them.
Absolutely. And, one of the other things that I think brands, when I was agency side, clients could never really get their heads round the value of retaining us as a partner, a long-term partner. So what, we never really, I don't think we got there with many clients, maybe one or two, because, clients kind of want to keep their cards close to their chest because they think if they do, they'll get better value. But what we used to push for is what is your marketing budget for 12 months, right? And we will make that work as hard as possible. But if we
Yeah.
don't know what's coming down the track in terms of budget, but you've told us what all your priorities are, we can't scale this and make it work. And especially in hospitality, which is completely seasonal, if our agencies don't know our annual budgets and actually what we've got to play with, it's very hard to get value out of them because then value is project by project basis and therefore it's not long term and it's very,
Yeah, you're
very
right.
short term. And I think for me, the value is, you know, upfront with budgets longer term because then agencies are thinking about
I
how they scale that throughout the year and not just how do we complete this summer project?
We've been talking about agencies a lot. I want to bring us back towards your current world. And I know that you've got, you know, a really good track record on both sides of the card, but in that hospitality sector. And one of the things when I was thinking about this conversation is just how hard the hospitality sector has had it over the last, 4 years, 3 years. Um, I thought it would be cool if you could talk to our listeners about really where that sector is, and as you entered into Prezzo, sort of what that starting point is. And then later we'll get onto the mission and the aims. But what's your take on hospitality as an expert within it?
Thank you very much for saying that. Yeah, I mean, like, there's no getting away from I think the pandemic just decimated hospitality. And I think a lot of brands are still trying to recover from that. Um,
Yeah.
you know, thankfully, Prezzo are on a great track, but I think that was, you know, hospitality was always struggling. I worked for a pub brand previously. I mean, pubs were shutting left, right, and centre. There's a horrible stat out there that I can't remember, but like a pub every few seconds or whatever.
Mm.
Um, so, you know, that was already happening, and I think hospitality has always suffered. And then obviously COVID happened, and I think, like I say, that decimated hospitality, and it's taken a while. I don't think everyone is still out of that, but I think, you know, there is a level of stability now. Um, I think the biggest
Mm.
thing affecting hospitality at the moment is people, because of the cost of living crisis, people are discriminating in how they spend their money. Um,
Mm.
and, you know, you always know this, that's always an environmental factor that you consider. But I think one of the biggest, you know, what the fuck is going on moments was recently McDonald's reported, you know, a global percent drop in their sales. Um,
Unheard of.
Unheard of. Well, that made it into my
And
commercial
actually,
meeting.
usually in a downturn, it's actually those fast food brands that do better. So we're really seeing a pinch at the bottom and the middle. How does that affect occasional dining or pubs? What's the
Exactly.
impact?
Yeah, the impact is vast. So, you know, you have to, and it kind of goes back to agency a bit. You always want to be focusing on the brand and telling the story of the brand experience, and, you know, seeing your next occasion there, and, you know, all of our great creative and content resonating with you on an emotional level. When you get into these kind of territories where, you know, there's some really hard thought that, well, there's discrimination over how you're spending your money, um, you have to be value led, and that manifests
Mm.
in, you know, discounts and offers, and, you know, a bit of a bun fight with your competitors, I suppose, because
And it's a quick
it's a
race to the
quick
bottom,
race
then,
to
isn't it? It's
100%. You're so right. So you're constantly pivoting. So, you know, you you need to be filling up your lovely funnel of guests coming in with, you know, great awareness and great creative and great advertising. But in hospitality, you're looking at those numbers on a daily basis, and you're certainly reviewing them in depth every single week. And so there is a lot of short-term levers that are pulled
yeah,
that take you away from your long-term strategy. And that's what I mean when the JFDIs come in. It's like, you know, actually, guys, we traded really well over the weekend, but we know summer holidays are about to end. And we know that there's going to be a
yeah.
period of time between kids back to school and Christmas where we're just going to be in some short-term trading. So actually, you know, we'll revert to a value-based strategy versus a brand building or brand awareness strategy. So, yeah, I think
And I think if you're doing that from that position of understanding, I think I think you can take people with you on that, and it is the reality. Every business has the macro and micro environment it's in. How do you cope with that? There's so many factors. So when you go into Prezzo, and this is the reality of where we are, and you talk about that value add, what was the mission that they set you, and what are you and your CMO really digging into as the marketing leadership in there? What are they saying needs to be achieved, and where do you see the opportunities to do something
Yeah,
new?
that's great. So there's a couple of there's two real things we're focusing on. We're focusing on driving frequency, so getting and encouraging our guests to return. The hard part you'd
Mm.
think is getting them through the door. Actually, the hard part is getting them to become a frequent guest. And there is so much stuff that sits around that to make it work. And we talk a lot about we can get them to book, and then we have to hand over to the operations team to get them to come back essentially, and we can put loads of marketing around the outside to drive that as well. So it's a real tandem job between kind of marketing and ops and our employees. So driving frequency is a real big one, but also acquiring brand new guests as well. So obviously out of the back of COVID we closed restaurants. um, you know we used to be on every corner, I suppose, and now we're not on every single one. So there's a perception that my local Prezzo has closed, for example. Um, and so we're trying to kind of, reinform, reignite, and get the existing people to come back, those that are sat on our database, but acquire new people by helping them to understand the brand and what we offer. So our
Mm.
strategy is therefore twofold. What we're also trying to layer into that is truly understanding who our guests are. So, who are our existing guests and who are the guests we're trying to acquire, and making sure that our marketing resonates with them, because any hospitality brand will tell you, well, anyone can be our guest. We are guest agnostic.
Mm.
We appeal to everybody.
One of the funny things is about that change in where marketing's been and where it's gone is the infatuation with personas. Okay. So, and I have love for the marketing persona, but also hatred. And the reason being, in the context of who are our guests, someone somewhere will draw up three or four personas because it takes too long to do more than that. It will say Jill has a family of four. She lives nearby. Her frustrations are, and I think anyone who's listening
She
to this
listens to Heart
has probably
FM.
made, or she listens to Heart FM. She's thinking about
Yeah.
divorcing her husband. Yeah, if you
Yeah.
want to get creative, because everyone's got bored at the end of the session. It's great for people to think about customers, but by narrowing our view in that way, they are great for a media buyer. You give that to a media buyer and they go, all right, you want A, B, and but in terms of the challenge you've got, how are you going about getting to grips with the breadth of customer that could make you successful?
Yeah, so it is about the breadth of customer, and it's also about understanding where we are. I think it's really understanding who our existing guests are to really see where the gaps and opportunities are. And, there's quite a focus in the business on the generations we have in the business and their needs and their wants from an employee point of view, but also from a guest point of view. So,
Mm.
our future customer is Gen Z and Gen Alpha. What are we doing to engage them beyond their mum or dad bringing them in? How are we appealing to them? How are we showing up? And I reckon a lot of brands are probably sort of grappling with it.
Everybody
Absolutely.
is. Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
You know, but this is long term again, isn't it? This isn't, you know, the lunchtime crowd. This isn't how do we get a busier lunchtime. This is like years down the line. how have we appealed to the right guests? Because we need to appeal to them now to make sure that they're our, our guest in the future.
I, yeah, you're doing the right thing, because I mean I talk about with my clients, and it's a bit morbid, but cradle to grave, and it's how does our organisation have a meaningful, or does it need a connection with any of these people all the way through, and where does that fit in? And what I love about the approach that you guys are taking is you've mentioned several times that it's not you talk about the marketing bit, but then you talk about the operations, and in hospitality more than any other, but I think other sectors should think about this. The reputation you've got and the loyalty I have to your brand is not dependent on the advert I've seen at all. It's the experience I have, the conversations I have, the service delivery, and that pure marketing piece that makes me stay honest and go, do you know what? I will go back there again because I got an authentic experience that I
Yeah.
value. So bringing them into your orbit is
Our,
absolutely correct, and other people need to do a
our
lot more of it.
operations teams are the most important people in our business. And, you know, getting to know them is probably the most important thing I can do as a marketing leader in this business. And that is being facilitated, and that's great. Agencies could really take a step in that direction, understanding the experience of the brands they're working on, speaking to the people that are putting your food in front of you to really understand, you know, their pain points or the general manager's pain points, because that goes a long way in this industry.
I know you're right at the beginning of the journey, really. But what are your hopes for the future? And what, I know you've got a new CMO coming in. What are your hopes and plans for the future at Prezzo?
Yeah, so plans for the future. So we're in our business planning phase now for next year. There's some really exciting innovation coming out of the business. So there is that long-term view versus that short-term need. So there's some really exciting innovation coming out of the business, which is going to enable us to work with more partners. That's really exciting. I think brand collaborations and partner collaborations are going to be really important for us next year. I think, you can market in a bit of a vacuum sometimes. You make your database work hard, you're talking to your existing audience all the time. I think what we're really keen to do is we're already working with great suppliers. How do we work with some great brands and collaborate with them better? Surreal did it's like the most bizarre brand collaboration that I saw today, but they've like collaborated with a baby food brand, Gymshark, etc., all because they wanted to do a Spice Girls inspired ad. So sporty, and you guys have to go and look at it. It is absolute genius, and just goes to show brand collaborations. You don't have to be aligned in what you're selling, your mission, your whatever. Sometimes it's just a good idea, and the cross pollination of audiences and the cross marketing that's going to do for them is just bloody genius. And I love it because it's so simple, and I'm sure the creatives, it's come from a really strategic place, but on the surface it just looks like something fun to do. So that's going to be really important for us.
And it comes from, I think, on that, I think it comes from a place of trying to do something different. And in a world where there's so many things that are the same, that's why these things stick out to us. So it's, having an ambition just to say, yeah, we'll do all the stuff that we've got to do. We'll do just get it done.
Yeah.
And also the core stuff we need to do. But where's the innovation and where do we just try some things? And those brand sort of partnerships are a really good space to play in.
They're really fun because not only do you get like all the benefits of working with another brand, you both do, you both get sort of airtime with each other's audiences, but you get a totally other creative brain in the room. And something really special can come from that. And it clearly has for the brand I mentioned. And so that's quite exciting. So there's some innovation which opens up some brand collabs. And then, I'm really keen to get this sort of next generation of guest strategy together and, start doing it well, but making sure that our menu and our environments are right for that audience too. So there's lots of teams that need to work together to make it happen.
Well, I'm sure now you've said this, you're going to get loads and loads of LinkedIn
That's totally fine.
requests
That's totally fine.
saying, "Oh, I've been thinking about that," and one might be from me
fine.
actually. So I'll come back to you on that point. But look, we're coming towards the end of our time, and I've really enjoyed this conversation. It's nice to talk to somebody that's really been both sides of that coin, and I think it's been great insight for our listeners as well. But I wondered if, just to sort of wrap up, if there's something that stands out through your career, that really stands out as a piece of advice that somebody's given you, that in your new optimistic, future-facing role really rings true, or that you could share with us.
Don't be a dick. And
shit.
What, am I not allowed to say that? Oh, you're just okay.
No, you can say it. It just felt like you're saying it to me.
To you. I'm not saying it to you. I'm actually saying it to myself.
You could.
And I repeat it to myself quite often because, agency side, you're a good agency. You can get an ego, and that's totally fine. You're doing great work. You've had great success. The brand that's coming to you for a bit of work might not have the biggest budgets, might not know what they're talking about. Don't be a dick. Be kind. Make them look better. That in turn makes you look better. And then also from this side of the table, don't be a dick to your agencies. Don't be a dick to your agencies. Definitely don't be a dick to your teams. It's so bloody simple, but you'll notice the kinder you are, the less of a dick you are, the more you get done. It's really, really simple.
I love it. And we all know that it's easier said than done sometimes when you've got the weight of 1,000 things. But if you're entirely right, the times when I've been under most pressure and stress is when I've isolated myself because I'm being a dick. And I think, well, I know better. I'll just take all of this weight on my shoulders. It also comes, it also transmits with how you talk to people. And the times when I've been my happiest and done our best work is when everyone's in it together and we're all pulling together. You can't do it every day. So I love that advice.
Very simple.
Great advice. So we're at the end of our time together. So it just leaves me to say thank you so much for joining us. And I know you're heading off to a party, but if you've got any last thoughts or words, please say them now. Otherwise, thank you very much.
I think that was a really great chat. And I hope it helps. But, in all seriousness, if anyone has any questions or any great ideas, my LinkedIn DMs are open. So go for it.
We will put them in the show notes. Now, Naddy, have a great party.
Thanks,
I'll see you later.
That's a wrap on another episode of UnEDited. Make sure to like, subscribe and turn on those notifications so you never miss an episode. Find all of our updates on your favourite social media and podcast platforms. Just search for the UnEDited podcast.